All right, welcome to our next session. Here with me I have Annemarie and Dominic from SAP, and they will talk about streamlining local app previews, virtual endpoint for seamless development, which I'm not going to pretend to understand, so I'll let you talk about it.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, actually it's not that hard, but after that session you will for sure know. So, but before we start, just one quick question from my personal interest. Who of you used Fiori Elements so far? Okay, that's quite a lot. Very good. And who used Fiori Tools? Oh, that's actually quite even. So that's very good. So let's see what we got for you. Brief agenda. Anna, you can take a seat. So I will start giving you some context and the status quo of the app preview and how it's currently done and why it's needed. And then Anna will streamline that approach. And at the end, we'll meet again for Outlook and Q&A. So having said that, welcome to Development City. So that's the underground map of Development City. And you should be somewhat familiar with the station names because it centers around about development. So, for example, you generate an app, you add a feature, and so on and so forth. So the central station of that is the local preview. Why that? Because no matter if you fix a bug, if you add a feature, if you refactor something, what you do before deploying that application to the live system, you want to make sure that it actually runs, and therefore you need a local preview of that thing, what you did, for example, if that new feature. So this presentation is round about that central station local preview, and with that we now have a closer look at that station. What is the local preview all about? So I have a very small picture of an app folder structure for you. The joke comes later. And the actual content is the business data. That's no problem. But it also contains glue code that is needed to be able to locally preview your application. And that glue code, although it is part of each and every of your application, does not add any business value, right? So what is the glue code? Now also for the guys in the very back, I'm referring to this part, right? So the OPA test QUnit JS HTML stuff for the OPA 5 tests, then the FLP sandbox for the local sandbox preview, and also the Testsuite QUnit HTML. And what's now missing here is the unit test setup, which is basically the same like the OPA test. So you have now this glue code in your repository, and having that glue code actually comes with a few downsides. So one downside is this is your repository, so you also have the maintenance responsibility for that glue code, right? So if you generated that application yesterday, then probably you get the latest and greatest best practice code from SAP, and that's perfectly fine. But if you generated that app like 5 years ago, then probably that code is a bit old and might also be outdated from a best practice point of view. So the maintenance effort is one point, or to make it even clearer, maintenance effort for code that does not add business value. That's even worse, because having code that actually serves a business value is okay. But maintenance effort for non-business value relevant stuff is maybe not what you want to go for, and also potentially outdated SAP best practice code. So what I mean with maintenance effort, I will show you in a second, because we have an example prepared to show what it could mean to have the maintenance effort for that local preview. So I'm quitting the presentation right now, going into the actual application. So we have VSCode, and I already started an application. You see it on a terminal, it's already running. So this is a list report application, and we have a look at the about dialog. So we see it's running on 136.2. Okay, perfectly fine. That's the current setup. Close that one. Go back to VS Code. Close the server. So what I'm going to do now is so this app currently uses the Fiori Tools proxy and uses UI5 version 136.2. So what I'm going to do now, in a keynote, we learned that there's something like a 136.3 legacy free available. So we're just going to comment that version out and use that version. So I'm going to restart the application. And then we see what happens. Something happened, but actually not what I expected. So let's have a look at development tools. And what we see here now is some cryptic error from a create renderer in a locate reuslips. Actually, that locate reuslips.js is part of that glue code. So now I have an issue because my boss is actually sitting in the second row. I screwed up the application mid-presentation. Anna, could you maybe help me in getting this fixed?
I'm not sure what you want me to do. Should I now fix the glue code for you?
Do all what it takes to make
I guess to fix the glue code, we would need to open a support ticket. But I would have a better solution for you. We could switch to virtual endpoints to preview your application. Let me switch back to VS Code, stop this terminal. Because this would mean no maintenance effort for you and no support ticket for us. And the preview middleware could actually provide those virtual endpoints on the fly and serve this mentioned glue code on a virtual basis. And there's actually also a quite handy command offered over the application info page of the Fiori Tools, which could achieve this for you. So the command can convert the configuration of existing Fiori Elements application to use those virtual endpoints for previewing. And down here I have the option, and I'm just going to click on it and see what it does. So this now executes a so-called SAP UX create command in the terminal, which will first download the needed node modules. The command itself can be found in our open source code base in the create package itself. Let me also quickly show you the documentation on the command. It's called preview config. And at this point, contributions are always welcome. There are some quite handy commands in there. Feel free to check it out. Let's switch back and see what it did. Okay, we got our first question. So in short, it asks us if we would maybe like to simulate those changes first, because this command will alter files. But since I will explain everything to you, we can answer this with no. The next question is if we would like to also convert the configurations of our tests to run on this virtual endpoints. And for sure, we would like to do so. Okay, we got quite some text here. Let's go over it. So the first thing we can see is that our FOP sandbox HTML file got renamed and now contains _old. So this file was actually our local endpoint, which is now renamed. And this was done in case there are any custom changes in this file, in order to keep them and not just delete them. And there's also a link pointing onto a documentation on how to move these custom changes to an init script. The next thing we can see is that our UI5 YAML file got updated according to script start. So this was also the case for other YAML files, as we can see. And I will show you in a short second what that actually means. The next thing we can see is that another file got renamed. Our OPA test QUnit JS file now contains the word custom. Some of you might know this is our journey runner for the tests, and I will also show you in a second where that one went. And then we can see that also our local endpoints to run the tests on got renamed. This is also now the same case as for our local endpoint to preview, in case there are any custom changes in this file in order to keep them and not just delete them. Also a link pointing to a documentation on how to move them. And in the end, we can see that some files got deleted. I guess there is also this locate reuslips file, which was causing some issues, right? Okay, let's have a closer look at one of the respective YAML files. I would choose the UI5 mock for this one. And here we can see that our preview middleware configuration got updated. So what the command actually did is it went over all the scripts in the package.json file, which contain a Fiori run or UI5 serve CLI. And based on that, it extracted the given endpoint from the script and written it into the associated YAML file. So here we can see that our FOP configuration now contains a path property, which is pointing to our now virtual endpoint. We can also see that the command extracted the intent from the script and written this one also into the YAML file. Underneath, we have our updated test configuration, which now contains a framework to run the tests on, which would be OPA 5 or Testsuite in this case. We do now also have a path property, which is now pointing to our virtual endpoint to run the tests on, and we have a pattern property. And this pattern property is now used in order to execute our tests accordingly, so this is where our journey runner went. And as you might see, our endpoints did not change names, but locations. Let's also have a closer look at the Git view, because here we can see that the files got renamed. As I mentioned before, this was done in order to keep those custom changes if they're given. If not, those files for sure now could also be deleted. We can see that our UI5 YAML files got updated accordingly and that we got rid of some other files. I guess this mentioned glue code. Let's have a look if this already fixed the issue. We'll start the preview again. And while this pops up, let me quickly show you that there is now for sure also the option to directly generate such an application with those virtual endpoints in use. For this, you could use the generator of the Fiori Tools. It's been mentioned in the keynotes before and also in our open source code base. And I've already clicked myself through until the point of the project attributes. And if I scroll down, I can see that there is now the option to use those virtual endpoints selected by default, which means for sure you could still say no and use local endpoints if needed. Let's have a quick look at such a newly generated project structure, because here we can see that our test folder does not contain the FOP sandbox HTML file anymore. I mean, we do see the files to run the tests on, yes, but this is not yet supported and will hopefully come soon. But we are now using our default endpoint, which would be the FOP HTML, as a virtual endpoint, and this means there is no additional YAML configuration needed in order to let this run. Okay, let's have a quick look at our preview. It looks to me like this already solved your issue, Dominic.
Can you please show the... First of all, thank you. Can you please prove that by showing the about dialog of the...
Sure, let's have a look at the version.
Okay, so I'm partly convinced because now I know that this runs on the legacy free, right? So, but can I use also the previous UI5 version? So is it compatible with...
That's a good question. Let's switch back to VSCode and stop the terminal, because there's actually quite another handy feature for this, also offered over the Fiori Tools, the so-called run configs. With this, you can create a new run configuration to let your preview run on, for example, on a different UI5 version, without doing any Git relevant changes. So let me copy this one, and let's adjust it. So here you can see we're using our FOP sandbox HTML endpoint, which is now virtual. And down here we can select a different UI5 version. Which one would you like to have?
Let's say 130, what's the latest, 11 something?
130, 11.
Down, down, down.
Down, down, down.
There it is.
Oh, there it is, there it is. Yeah. Okay, let's save this.
Let's try that one.
And let's run this. Click again. Okay, the run configs itself are started in the debug mode. And the preview is already opening. Okay, let's have a look if this one is the correct version. Oh, looks to me like this fixed your issue.
Okay, now I'm convinced, right? So let's go back to the presentation. To give you a short recap of what you just saw. So we have now this preview middleware, which is the UI5 middleware, which gets you rid of your maintenance effort, that's point one, and always serves the latest and greatest SAP best practice code. And to make it even better, it also supports all the UI5 versions. So legacy free or any other UI5 version. Doesn't matter. It serves it on a virtual basis. So all of this glue code is now out or can be out of your repository. So with that, we're going to the brief outlook. So because The second benefit would be, now we are serving those files on a virtual basis. So this means the files are no longer in your repository, which also means we could change those files and you could get our updates by just adjusting the package version in your package.json. So with that, we can of course ship other features. So just as an example, there's the enhanced homepage mode for this preview middleware also existing, which comes, like you can see on the picture here, more with this S4 Launchpad experience. We also have another virtual endpoint for the cards generator. There you can generate cards of the object page to be used in a collaboration manager or MS Teams. And there's also a virtual endpoint for variance management. For example, if you're on a list report and want to change that filter bar, and then you can directly do this from the virtual endpoint and save your changes files. So this and more of those, what we call micro experience, will follow in the future. One example you can see on this picture, because there in the very top, you see this to-do section. So we plan to enhance this by a section where we can actually make suggestions on what could be done to improve the application. As just one sample here in the picture, it would be your preview middleware package version is outdated, and we then could inform you and you could update it right away from the preview of your actual business application. So with that, we're already at the Q&A part. But before that, I have 3 QR codes for you. So the first one is the Fiori Tools VSCode extension. So if you're not having tested it yet, please try it out. The second one is the SAP UX UI 5 tooling, which is basically a bundle of all of our open source middlewares. So we ensure that the versions are compatible of all these packages. So, and you just have one version in your package.json that you need to update. That's quite handy. But of course, you can also use all the single parts that are contained in that package in our directly in our OpenUX Tools repo. So that's the third one. If you want to go there, that's for sure also open source, and contributions are also welcome. And with that, I can open the Q&A. And of course, we have that feedback slide with a slight recommendation on where you could vote for that session.
Fairly opinionated, but okay, fair enough. Thanks. So, are there any questions in the audience? Okay, let me start over here.
Thank you. Just a small context about the question. SAP Build Workzone embeds the UI5 application in an iframe. And this becomes a little bit of a trouble because certain things you can only test deploying your app, right? Because of this iframe mainly. So using virtual endpoints would be possible to kind of avoid this situation, and you would get how the iframe would impact your application locally. So I mean that I guess that the virtual endpoints are not used in an iframe right now.
No, currently not.
Okay, and do you think that this could be something that you could add in the future, or removing the iframe from Workzone?
Yeah, so of course we're not from Workzone, so that's a different topic. So, but of course, if we see a use case, or if we have a closer look at the use case, then of course we can see what's the issue there and try to figure something out that would be supported. But of course, it's hard by just having one sentence, but for sure you can reach out to us. So we are always happy for use cases that we can learn and improve. So yeah, sure.
Second question over there. Yeah, I can get around, don't worry.
Awesome, thanks. Good job on the presentation. So I just want to make sure I get this right, because I think you said that with the preview middleware, you still need the Testsuite HTML to run, even though like that's all you need. But I'm pretty sure if you use the preview middleware, without having a testsuite.QUnit.html, it was still able to run the unit tests just fine. Did I get this right, or?
Yeah, so the thing is, the generator, the Fiori generator, currently only supports virtualize local sandbox, but it does not yet support virtual test endpoints. But of course, the converter and also the middleware as such supports also the test serving the test glue code on a virtual basis. Yeah, the only thing that does not yet support the virtual test setup is when you newly generate an app using the generator, because that currently, if you tick that box, it currently only serves the Launchpad on a virtual basis, but not yet the test. But of course, we're working on that one as well.
All right, cool. Well, the easy UI5 generator does it with your help, by the way. We did the
that's also a good topic. Yeah, so having those generators streamlined is also on my list.
Awesome, cool. Thank you.
All right, I think we got time for more questions, if there is anybody. All right, does not seem to be the case. You were perfectly on time. Thanks a lot for your talk, and yeah, thanks again.